I just came back from a run, and that's why I'm without a shirt, because it's kind of pretty hot here. It's not like too hot, but after running, like I need to really cool down. And I've tried to run multiple times with the shirt on, and it's almost impossible just because you sweat a lot, and then it kind of like feels like you're just wearing like a soggy, like wet, like towel around you because it feels like it's squeezing you. So I usually sometimes I'll start running with a shirt and then I'll take it off and put it back on later. But right now, I just need to cool down for a bit. Um, Yesterday, I posted my letter on Substack, and it pretty much talks about when childhood ends. And I feel like it's the right time to make this video and talk about this because I'm back home in Bosnia where I was born, and this is where my childhood pretty much started. I was only here till about maybe when I was like 5 years old, and then we left to America. So I'm back here now. I've been here for about a month. We did some traveling, driving around different parts of it and doing some sightseeing, things like that. And then we're finally back here at my hometown in the house where I was raised at. So what you see behind me is just like open land. We live on top of a hill with not that many neighbors around here. So it's really peaceful and quiet, which makes perfect sense for us because that's the type of people that we are. So I love it here. And I've been working on that letter for about 2 weeks. It's a very short and simple letter, but it was just something that I had to like, you know, work on a little bit longer than usual. And it pretty much talks about when childhood ends, for me, and I'm pretty sure for the most of you, is when you got like a big responsibility. So for me, that childhood ended when, you know, we got this responsibility where my parents were doing janitorial work for a few buildings, and then we would have to go with them and, clean and do like maintenance work on all of these, buildings. Um, and I think that childhood ends for a lot of people when they start getting really big responsibilities, something that maybe a child shouldn't like have right away. Typically, that's like taking care of another sibling, and it's not just like taking care of them for, I don't know, half an hour while the parent goes to the store. It's usually up to like 8 hours while the parent is at work or something like that. So having a big responsibility definitely like takes you out of childhood and starts pushing you into adulthood really quickly. But I think that's important, and I think it happens for people at different times. Some quicker than others. Some, that happens like when they're a teenager. Some that doesn't happen until they graduate high school or college. And for some, it doesn't happen until like a parent dies or they move out and they really start having their own responsibilities, their bills, their own, way of life and how they have to do things and just certain things like that. It just really depends on the person, and it depends on like for somebody they may have an advantage because for me, that responsibility started like when I was like 10, 11, 12. So I was like, doing all of those things at that age, which kind of pushed me forward faster than other people because then I learned quicker how to fix things, how to do things around the house, stuff like that. For somebody else, that may take a little bit longer. But the point is that, you know, childhood ends at that time when you gain big responsibility. And, I used to think that that was kind of like a burden, kind of a thing like where I didn't really experience my childhood a lot. But the other thing is that we often look at the bad things that have happened in our life and not really the good things. And sometimes, when you get older and you start thinking about your childhood and you start thinking about all the, things that you went through and all the kind of like bad things and the things that you didn't want to do as a kid and stuff like that, you start to really think of your life in like a negative way. But if you start to think, from a positive way on the things that you've learned and how that pushed you forward in life, you start to realize that you did have a childhood. You just had a different childhood though. You had a childhood where you had to grow up a little bit faster. You had to take on responsibility quicker than other people. And it's not a bad thing. really is like one of those things where just like that's how your life unfolded. And if you look at it from a better, perspective, where you start to realize that you learn things quicker, you grew up faster, but then you had more confidence, and um, you were able to do, certain things that maybe people in your age group didn't do or couldn't do. And sometimes, like, you were able to drive, like I was able to drive the car much quicker than other kids. When I was 16 and I got my driver's license, my parents already knew that I was pretty responsible and they could send me to the store by myself so I could go pick up something. While other kids, even though they got their driver's license at 16, their parents were just unsure that they were going to be able to take on that big responsibility and that role where they could drive by themselves. So oftentimes those kids had to all the time, drive with their parents only. So sometimes those things, like when you get pushed into responsibility quicker and your parents see that you can take that responsibility quicker, it works out in your favor because, yeah, it sucks sometimes that you grow up fast and by the time that you know it, you're already a teenager, you're like graduating high school, you're going to college, you're finishing college, like that all happens kind of quickly. But if you really start to dive back into your life and dive back into your childhood, you start to realize that that responsibility really worked in your favor. And this is one way that you can start to kind of, I guess, close the gap on your childhood or go back to your childhood and realize that there were certain good things that happened in your childhood. It's just that you got pushed forward much quicker than other people. And it's not really anybody's fault. It's just the way that your life unfolded. So I'm going to link the full letter down in the description and you can go through and read it. I don't memorize all the letters that I write, off the top of my head. I just know the gist of it and what it's about. And, I can explain it to somewhat detail, but the full letter is going to be on Substack down there. I'll link it and read it and let me know what you think. See you in the next one. Peace.